All right, what's up, Bulldogs? So I have Josh from Pinnacle of Man here, and we're going to be talking about porn addiction. This is a big problem. I've talked about it maybe a little bit on this channel, but definitely haven't given it enough of a conversation. And so I brought Josh on here because Josh has helped a lot of men with this problem, and Josh is also one of the guys that I believe that in this space, on YouTube, talking about men's issues, that Josh and I agree about a lot of things. We've come through all of the kind of phases of everything from pickup to relationships, and have kind of come to a lot of the same conclusions. So I thought, who better to talk to about this and help you guys out than Josh. So welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we definitely agree on a lot of topics across the self-development space for men, for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy how, I don't know, like you go on this journey, and I think a lot of guys start off in the pickup space because that's usually the most appealing.
Yeah.
But then, I think some people get stuck there, but then some people find, the kind of better roads to go and incorporate all those things. And I feel like you're one of those guys that's done that.
Yeah. You're telling me that life's not just about chasing women?
Sometimes I think a lot of guys feel like it is when they feel like they can't get any women. You know what I mean? And it's like,
You want what you can't have, so you put your energy and attention on it, right?
exactly. And they get this idea that, like, if I could just do this, then then my life would be great. But
Just have that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, everything will be happy,
yeah.
For
So
sure.
maybe what's your story? Maybe a little bit of backgrounds for everyone to kind of, how did you arrive where you are, and get to kind of find out these things in life.
Yeah, Batman origin story. So it started off with women, like we said, and I think a lot of guys in this space, like, we have that kind of camaraderie of struggling with women. It's through different colors and shades, but like I sucked with girls, and I didn't get it because on paper I'm tall and attractive and in good shape, and like, why am I not attracting these girls? So I realized early on that like looks got you in the door maybe, but like it was not enough, and so I was like left for by other guys. I was cheated on, that whole spiel, and so it sent me to seek answers because that pain usually does. That's a gift. And I went to graduate school in psychology, and I started pursuing kind of like, my thesis was on like short-term mating selection in women, like why they choose guys to hook up with. Like, I was like trying to understand that. And a lot of failed relationships, but like I went to school at Chico State, which is a huge party school in Northern
Oh yeah.
California. And it was kind of like my battlegrounds where I was like going out like 3 times a week, just like grinding, gaming, talking to girls. And it wasn't good on the body. I drank a lot. I'm not gonna lie, but I did develop a lot of like, went from completely introverted and shy, stuck in my room first year watching porn nonstop, to being able to where I can teach guys by the end of my graduate program. And that led me to start the channel. And I just wanted to make videos for fun because I always like creating, and just kind of grew from there. And I didn't realize till later on that porn was a huge issue for me. I didn't realize other guys were struggling with it because a lot of men, as you know, John, we don't talk about this. We'd rather
Right.
hear that we killed someone than like share our internet browser history of the porn we watch.
Right.
And so a lot of guys, I put a couple of videos out there, and there's that nofap movement, and I got like 1 million views on my first video that I made. I was like, holy crap, like a lot of people are struggling with this. And I had a lot of expertise. I worked with sex addicts. I worked in addiction field after graduate school. So I had a model that people talking about it didn't really have expertise on it and how to treat it. And a lot of it was like BS, like, oh, you get superpowers when you quit. It's like, no, you don't.
All right.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of teach guys the truth about this, quitting porn, what it does for you. And from there, it just grew and grew, and I was able to help a lot of guys. Yeah.
Now, what do you think is the percentage of guys that are addicted to porn?
Well, yeah, that's a tough one. So it's even psychologists disagree with what addiction is, because
Right.
technically most psychologists say that porn isn't even an addiction, which it totally is based on the
Right.
definition of what addiction is. So for those guys listening, if you think you have an addiction or not, it's Dr. Gabor Mate. He wrote the book In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and he's an addiction expert in the world. And he said an addiction essentially is 2 components. Are you doing it compulsively, which means you're just like, you're caught yourself. You're just watching videos. You're like, how did I even get here? Like a second ago, I was like just looking on Instagram. Now I'm watching videos out of nowhere. So it just happens automatically. And then you also do that activity or substance despite it having consequences. So if you watch porn and it's like eating into your time and eating into your sleep, you feel shameful after all that stuff, you feel less confident, have more anxiety, it's an addiction with those 2 things involved. So for those guys listening, I would say honestly, man, like probably 40% of people that watch it, the guys probably have an addiction to it.
Yeah. That's I definitely would agree with that, and I think it's like the number of guys that are maybe wouldn't quite qualify as addiction, but they have a porn habit.
Big time.
I think that's like 90-95% from my experience. It's a very very high number.
Yeah, it's, a habit. It's just, they're just like, yeah, it's just not a big deal at all. And like the other day, I was walking around, these two guys in front of me, or like I was walking outside, they were just talking about it. And this guy was like, he's got rejected by this girl. He's like, I'm gonna go home and watch porn. And it's just like, there it is.
Right.
Like, there's the replacement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of talk today, and actually a lot of it actually originates from kind of feminist type of viewpoints. I think a lot of guys don't realize this, that porn's okay, it's not a big deal, it's not an issue, it's nothing to be shameful of, like it's fine to watch porn. But I think that's a pretty harmful message, because of the actual harm. So maybe let's talk about like why, someone, maybe they have that perspective, they're like, no, it's fine, like let's not shame people, it's okay to do this, it's not a big deal, do what you want to do. Why is that? I mean, to some degree, yeah, I guess that's it's true, like you can do what you want to do, but at the same time, what are the actual harmful effects that guys maybe don't realize that they have when they're subjecting themselves to this?
That's a great question. So like I always compare it to alcohol. Like there's people out there that can drink fine, right?
Mhm.
You can have a couple drinks, you're good. But there's some people out there when alcohol touches their tongue, they can't control themselves, right?
Right.
It's the same thing for a lot of men. And for whatever reason, I mean, you have to also realize that I can go on my Instagram and I have like 12 DMs from like kids as young as 12, 13, 14, 15 years old saying, I can't quit this. It's hard. And like we're being exposed to this as early as 9 years old now, some kids.
Yeah.
And just neurologically speaking, the amount of dopamine that gets sent through your brain when you watch porn, these streaming sites, like, I mean, porn, people who are saying that, John, most likely, they're the people that are older that they think porn is like, oh, a couple of pictures of naked girls. It's like, no, dude,
Right.
you have streaming whatever the hell you want at a click of a mouse, hundreds of, thousands of videos. And so that's way different than a couple of photos, right? And, I mean, neurologically speaking, it destroys your dopamine. And for those guys who don't know, dopamine is that incentive molecule. So if you procrastinate on things, if you start stuff and you don't finish it, and if you have lack motivation and energy, your dopamine is dysregulated. And a big part of that, it's not only porn, of course, social media and this thing all the time if you're staring at it, but porn's a huge component of that. It destroys your dopamine center. So that's just one component out of many that affect you negatively when you watch porn too much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that, I mean, like you said, the phones, obviously, we're getting hit from everywhere with
All the time.
dopamine. I mean, when I was a kid, even like, I remember like getting a video game, like one video game for my birthday, right? Or for Christmas. And it was like, you play that game for like months because, but now it's like,
For me, it's
you
Pokemon
could,
Red, like this.
you could just get hundreds of that. I mean, there's thousands, like you could never play through. I remember going to the video rental store, and it was like, okay, this is the new release and this is the game, and it's like, but it's the same thing also with porn, because when I was a kid, shit, we had some magazines stashed in the woods or whatever, and it was like, a few pictures or
You're dating
whatever.
yourself.
Yeah, it's like you had to go and like go out to the woods and find the stash, and hopefully someone didn't steal it, and then or their parents didn't find it and take it away. And it was like, that wasn't nearly the level, like you said, today. And then the dopamine thing is, so many people, they don't have motivation, right? That
Yeah,
they because that's what motivates you. And it's like, if you're constantly getting a dopamine hit, then stuff like, doing boring work, working on building your business, trying to make money,
yep.
trying to, yeah, it's not as exhilarating. You don't have any motivation to do it. You don't even know why.
So one of the hidden, there's lots of hidden. I mean, we can talk about a lot of them, but I'll say another one is so guys who are into dating women, and so porn does two things damaging to your attraction to women. Not only does it lower your testosterone, which testosterone is, the more testosterone you have, like deeper your voice, the more just you're putting off that positive masculine vibe that women are just obsessed with, right? So that's one thing. It's lowering your testosterone, right? Secondly, you're teaching yourself that you can get sex immediately.
Right.
And so many guys, the biggest problem that a lot of guys have with women is that they rush too fast. Let me get your number after 5 minutes. Let me ask you on a date after 2 text messages. That comes from trying to get sex immediately from the girl. And the girl's like a long seduction process, right? So you're rushing too much and you're objectifying women. And when you objectify a woman, you put her on this pedestal and like, oh, she's this trophy to be earned. I want to hook up with her. And she doesn't feel like she can literally connect with you if she's above you, right? So like, you can't connect with her. And the final thing is that you're teaching your brain that you are a voyeur when it comes to sex. You're not an active participant.
Right.
That
Right.
and that tells you that you're not good enough to be hooking up with these girls. Only other guys that you're watching are. So all these things are drastically killing your ability to attract women too. That's just another component to all this, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I find a lot of guys too. They don't, the whole nofap movement is kind of interesting. But I've always been kind of like you said. Like people are like, oh, well, it doesn't. They're propping it up like it gives you superpowers, and I was always like, that's not like this is not the thing. But the thing that I think is very true about it is that I got a lot of, especially a lot of the guys I coach. It's like they don't have the motivation to go out, and they think that gaming is too hard, or going out and doing pickup is too hard because they say the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And it's like, well, that's like, where do you get that perspective from? Like the reason, like if you didn't have access to porn, like you wouldn't think that was the perspective, because you wouldn't have any other outlet, and it's like I feel like it becomes a crutch where it's like a lot of the guys, they could be a lot more successful with women, but because they have this crutch that they're using, they don't have the motivation to go out there, and they think that it's too hard to go out there and talk to women, so I guess that's like a big problem that I see with coaching men.
Big time. And another component to that is there's something called the emotional contagion effect or law of state transference, right? So you feel how the girl feels how you feel, and more times than not, the girl will replicate how you feel. The feminine follows the masculine, right? So if you're constantly feeling shameful after, or empty, or weak, or regretful after you finish, that emotion is going to linger with you for a while. When you go see that girl, if you try to talk to her, she's going to feel that like negative, low vibrational emotion, and for whatever reason, she's just not going to feel the vibe that girls are so attuned to, and she's
Right.
just going to reject you. And so, but if you can be the guy that's like putting off porn, not watching it, when you go up to her, you're in a healthy, masculine, aroused state. She's going to feel that in you, and she's going to be more attracted to you too from an emotional level.
Right. Exactly. So let's talk about a little bit about the difference, like between kind of what you and I kind of are teaching as far as that between nofap, because I think, I think nofap is the thing that most people are familiar with, but it's not quite the same, right? I mean, or where do you kind of stand on that between what we're advising guys or you're advising guys versus nofap?
Yeah, I think with nofap, like it's such a, with anything like that's new on the internet, it's not like a hard set of rules like what's what, right? Guys come to me all the time. It's like, was this count as a relapse? Should I do hard mode? Hard mode is basically, so there's PMO, which is porn, masturbation, orgasm. Hard mode is doing none of those, right? You don't even
Right.
know about orgasms. And look, I tell guys, do whatever you want, and kind of filter it through the idea of like the addiction thing. Like masturbation, for example, it could be healthy as long as it isn't wasting your time, or it's like you're not doing compulsively, right? Just like with drinking, like a glass of wine at the end of the night, it's not a big deal as long as it's not taking over your life. So my kind of perspective on this is pretty objective. It's like, analyze your life, look at how this behavior, how do you feel afterwards? Is it affecting your time? Is it conflicting with other goals? But when it comes to porn, I'm like, no, porn, like that's a drug. You don't need it. It's satiating certain needs that you can get met in a healthy way. The perfect example I gave is with like nutrition. So like it's called the Coca-Cola metaphor that I came up with. And it's like a guy can drink let's say he drank Coca-Cola his whole life whenever he was thirsty. He didn't know water existed. Coca-Cola, sugar, caffeine, all this stuff that gives him side effects. When he's thirsty, he can just go drink water and feel satiated. It's the same with porn. It's meeting a need, right? And so, but you can get that need met in a healthy way. And most times, guys don't watch porn because they're aroused. They're actually lonely, right? They're having anxiety. They're stressed out. They're bored. All these things. These are the four main ones that cause guys to actually go watch porn. And if you can meet those needs in a healthy way, you don't need to watch it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. Yeah. It's like meeting needs at a lower level instead of the higher level. And that prevents you from meeting needs at a higher level. It's just like if you ate fast food all the time, you wouldn't eat nutritious, because it's meeting the need. It's just not meeting at the level in which is best for you, or that higher level that you want. So you forget about that. You want something better with your life.
Yeah, and like it feels better in the moment, but then after, how do you feel? Right? It's the same thing with porn and junk food. Same thing, same exact thing. Like after, you feel empty. Like this wasn't as satiating as I expected it to be.
Yeah. So now I struggled for a while myself, with porn addiction. Like I think most men have, and I didn't even realize it. Like I was just, all of a sudden this became like a
Yep.
habit. And then, I got to this point where, I mean, for me, I finally, I had this sort of like identity where I was like, well, if I have this masculine identity, then this doesn't fit with that masculine identity, right? Just like,
Mhm.
I think if you're someone who's really into fitness and health and let's say yoga or something, you would feel like eating McDonald's doesn't fit with that identity. That's kind of what broke me out of it, was this like real deep, like, okay, this doesn't fit my identity, and having this new identity. And that got me to overcome it. But I think for a lot of guys, that's, it's a much harder road to do that. Not to say that that was super easy, but it was kind of like more of a light switch moment for me. What do you advise? Like, what are some steps? Like, what's kind of the path that guys could take? I know you've developed kind of a system and a formula for this. What's kind of the basics of that for guys to be able to quit porn once and for all?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and you know this more than anyone because your transformation story is epic, like the biggest one I've ever seen. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
And your audience knows it, so I don't have to go into it. But it is identity, man. And at the end of the day, it's like the metaphor I always use is like building a house, right? And you have all these techniques. Let's say the techniques are like the windows, the walls, the roof, all that stuff on top. It's necessary for the house, of course.
Right.
But I talk to architects and people develop homes, and like they said, the time it takes to develop the blueprint and lay the foundation is like more than 50% of actually building the home. And that's equivalent to your values and your beliefs or your identity, right? And so like you have guys out there who are trying to like quit or talk to girls or go work out. It's like they're focusing on these like habits and stuff and techniques, but they're not focusing on the foundation. And what happens is you build this foundation on a crappy foundation. When the first stressor comes along, or like first hard day, or it's like you feel like crap, you're not going to talk to that girl, you're not going to go to the gym, you're not going to quit porn. So the process is identifying those beliefs and those values that you developed as a kid, which is the psychological process I learned as a therapist. And you learn how to shift those identities to develop a new identity of the man you want to become. And the how is a long process. I mean, I call it my HCT method that I developed over years, but it's like, you have to change your identity. If you can have all the perfect, like for working out, right? You can have the perfect routine, like eat this every day, exactly down to a T. But if you feel like I'm just a fat person, or I'm just lazy, or you have these beliefs, you're never going to do
Right.
it. Right? You're going to subconsciously sabotage yourself all the time. It's the same thing
Yeah.
with any habit, and porn's another way to do that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That exactly aligns with my perspective on it. I have this thing, I call it the rubber band theory, and it's
Nice.
basically like, your willpower. Like, people try to stop things, whatever addiction, by willpower, and it's like pulling back a rubber band. It's like your willpower, you could do it for a while, but it'll snap back, and it'll snap back the other direction, and you'll binge. You'll go the opposite way, and that's what happens, all the time. I experience it myself in every kind of addiction. And then it's because your actions flow from your nature, and so you have to change your nature, and then it becomes effortless. Once your nature, your identity is changed, then the actions are a natural byproduct of that identity that you have. And so it's like, I think a lot of people focus on, and I think there's some good things with techniques and strategies and apps that there are out there, but ultimately, like, if you don't have that identity change, eventually that willpower cracks, and then you go the other way.
I mean, to tell guys like, I'm sure a lot of people have read James Clear's book, but there's another study talking about they had two sets of doctors take the same exact test. And on the test, the only difference between those two groups is they had one set of students say that they were a doctor, like, what is your occupation? The other one says that they were a student. The ones who said that they were actual doctor that took the test performed significantly better than the other group, just because they identified as being a doctor. Like, it's crazy, right?
Right.
Like, one little just like shift about who you are and what you are completely changes the way you put output into this world. And so like, you have to figure out who you want to be. And it's an easy process as soon as you go along with it, but like, it does take time, of course. Like, it doesn't happen automatically because you're fighting against years and years of, brain wiring, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so what do you think, like, I think a lot of guys have tried and failed, right? You hear, the relapse stories. Like, what if someone really wants to do this, if they're following kind of what you teach them, what have you seen as far as success with guys that work through kind of the system that you're giving them, focus on the identity?
Yeah. I like to tackle it from those like main triggers, right?
Mhm,
So the first one, boredom. How
mhm,
you fight boredom is, through purpose, right? Finding your purpose, and that connects to your identity. So like, the reason you're bored is because you don't have a larger reason why. Friedrich Nietzsche, my favorite quote from him is like, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. So once you develop your
right.
higher why, that fights the boredom. Your free time you want to put, like, for you, it's your business, right? Or running or whatever it is. Like, you have those like passions that you just want to devote time into. Now, the loneliness, I mean, we're more lonely than ever nowadays, even though we're so
Right.
connected through social media. But depression, suicide is at its highest for men that's ever been, and I think a big component of that is because we're so alone. And especially when it comes to this thing, like this habit, we don't want to share it with anyone. So what
Right.
I found is like the most powerful thing you can do is get a group of other guys that are going through the same problem as you, and you connect with them. They become your partners, and you guys help each other through this. It is so powerful when you can actually share, like, I'm struggling with this, and then you see other guys with the same exact struggle. It just creates it like this feeling of connectedness. And once you're connected, I tell guys in my program, I'm like, look, pick a moment where you felt the most connected and tell me what your urge was in that moment. And all the time, complete zero. Connection is the antidote to addiction, right?
Right.
And then for the stress, I mean, that's just about having, of course, the right identity that you develop, but then also those daily routines, like going to bed on time. Like, it seems so obvious, but getting enough sleep, working out, right? Like having a morning routine, those things completely fight the stress when you have a scheduled routine. So those three like main core components really fight the habit more than anything else.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a very different approach than what a lot of people have out there.
A lot of people use
And
willpower. They're like, I was gonna, because like the Western culture, John, right? It's like, I'm gonna fight,
exactly,
man. Like I can do this. I can grind it out. Like, it's so embedded into our psyche and the culture, and so it just doesn't work when it comes to fighting against yourself, really.
exactly. So, two things for you guys that are watching. Uh, First of all, if you want to find out about Josh's program, because we're only going to be able to cover so much here in this interview, but I want to open up for some questions here. But there's a link down below in the description. You can check it out and see. Josh has had a lot of success working with men, and I brought him on because his methods work, and they're in alignment. Like I said, if you have anything that doesn't focus on changing your identity, you can succeed for some period of time. Anyone can succeed with willpower, but identity is the most, I always say identity is the most powerful force in the universe. Like that, it's the thing that defines everything about your life. Like shifting your identity, back in, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics. If you guys have read that book, he was kind of the father that kind of pioneered like discovering this like self-image. You cannot change yourself. You will revert to whatever your self-image is, no matter how hard you try. And so anything that doesn't focus on changing your self-image will not result in a permanent change. So check the link down below if you guys are serious about this and really want to finally quit. And then the second thing I wanted to ask you guys is any questions here. So I'm going to try and answer some of your questions, have Josh answer some of your questions here, because I know you guys have a lot of questions about this and not too many people really openly talk about it. So drop some questions in the chat. I'm going to see what we have here so far. We've got Zeke says, I was addicted to porn for years. The longer I did it, added with the failure in the past with getting women, I just found it easier. Now I see it as taking care of the urge. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. We got, here's an interesting one. What do you think about this? Tidar says, I watch porn with my wife. What do you think about that, Josh?
Yeah, so I actually came across a study recently, so I'm glad that this actually came up, that studies do find that watching porn with your wife is actually a bonding experience, and it can improve the quality of the relationship. And so I think a lot of guys, like at least in my field, working with addicts when it comes to drugs or porn or alcoholism, it's kind of an isolating habit, right? So if you're doing it with other people and it's like it's a bonding experience for the both of you, it brings you closer. I'm all about that, 100%.
Right. I think that it also that eliminates the shame element of it, right? I think a lot of
Oh yeah.
right.
If you can share your like deepest kinks with your wife and she accepts you, that's like very cathartic and healing for you. So like props to you, Tyler, if you do that.
Are there dangers with this though? Like I feel like this could also be
The
something to
only
be,
way I can see that being dangerous
yeah.
is like if a husband or boyfriend wasn't exposed to it, and then the wife showed him it, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go watch this on my own now. It's really cool."
Right.
But that's such a outlier, I think, as an example that would actually happen. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that makes sense. And what do you? The other thing here, as why do you think this is a problem with men and not with women? It doesn't seem to be, as much of a problem, or even when women watch, they don't seem to be as addicted. I mean, there's like the romance novels, and I guess that's kind of more of their
yes,
version. And some women definitely get addicted to that,
no.
but it doesn't seem to affect them as negatively as men, even when they are, quote, addicted. At least from my experience.
We're hunters, John. Like we're visual, man. We're visually
Yeah.
stimulated. Porn's made for men, and Actually, I learned this in graduate school. Actually, I was like, all the fetishes. So like people who are into like weird fetishes, 90% of it are men, and because it's just like we're so visually stimulated, we want that kind of like visual satiation. But women are actually watching more and more porn as time goes on. Studies show, but yeah, women, it's like the romance novels. It's all in their head about like thinking and like wondering, and they're more sensual and touch. And so for us guys, man, it's that visual stimuli, that like that novelty that really gets us going. And so, which by the way, I didn't mention this, but another part of an ugly part that kind of brought me down to the depths of despair, where I almost wanted to take my own life. Whereas one of the hard things about porn is the studies show that earlier you watch it, the more
Mhm.
likely you're going to watch more fetishized and deviant porn as time goes on, because
Right.
you need more novelty. Like when you first saw your first naked photo, like that was like,
Yeah,
you're good to
exactly.
go, right? But then now you need like guys who need multiple tabs and go into new stuff. And for some men, it goes down a dark path where at first they see some like disgusting taboo stuff, and then they're like, well, let me just check it out. Curiosity, right? And that curiosity, it really turns into this arousal, and then it's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And actually, arousal is really connected to danger. And when you're like watching something that's not supposed to be happening, like you're connecting in your brain where it's going to like turn you on even more. And so this goes down a dark path where I see guys watch a lot of stuff that they're not actually into, and it really confuses them, shames them that they're watching this deviant, disgusting stuff. And that shame is, it really amplifies the addiction even more. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's I think a lot of studies that show, even like with fetishes, right? It's like people have like a latex fetish or something like that, and it's like that's kind of a weird thing, or a foot fetish, and it's like, why are these things so common? And it comes down to like, what was your first sexual
yeah,
experience, or like because your brain gets wired in that way, and then like we reinforce the wiring, and it's like, you can wire your brain to be turned on by different things, and and it's you get to a point where I think a lot of guys even have like ED problems, right? Because they're turned on by something that they can't create in real life, and now you're on this path. And I think a lot of guys lose hope because they think that that's just how they are, and they don't realize that if they just stopped, your brain would now become desensitized, and you'd be resensitized to just seeing a naked woman, which is where it should be.
yeah.
you know?
And the person who talks about that the most is Gary Wilson, and he's, rest in peace, he's just passed away recently. But he wrote the book Your Brain on Porn, and he had the website, and
Mhm.
he talks about the connection with ED more than anyone else. And it's a direct correlation. You can't say causation, but like the
Right.
more porn someone consumed, the more ED problems they had. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I think also the other thing I was thinking about too, about this, because a lot of guys, I've got some content in the Bulldog Mindset membership talking about like how to be better at sex, and I think a lot of guys watch porn and they think that it's like some technique, or the like, they get the wrong idea, and then just like you're saying, like how it's so much mental for women. It's like, it's, if you understand that, like if you watch porn, then you think that it's like something you need to do physically, and there, I mean, of course there's some element to that, but like 90% of it is what you're saying, how you're proceeding, how you're making her feel, like not
the
physically.
context of
And
the situation, yeah.
yeah, especially guys, like if you're having trouble like getting a woman to orgasm, like you can get a woman to a point where you need very little physical stimulation to do it, if you understand that. But porn is going to teach you the opposite of that, because it's not
I need to
real.
go 3 hours. I need to jackhammer and all this stuff, and like I need
Yeah.
to be this big, and yeah, that's what causes self-esteem issues too. Like guys think they have to be endowed a certain amount and all this stuff too, and it's just not. It's very damaging. Yeah.
Let me see. I think we had a question here. Okay, here we go. From Tarek. He says, what's psychologically healthier or more optimal for young humans' growth? Exploration from ignorance, or watching how it's done first? I
Hmm.
think he's related to saying in regards to sex.
Exploration from ignorance or watching how it's done first. That's a interesting question. I mean, um, hmm. It depends on the kind of exploration you go on, like how you're exposed to it, and how you watch, like how it's first exposed to you. And obviously, you know, healthy sex and porn are not connected, right? Like,
Right.
so if your first exposure to sex is pornography, that's completely distorted from reality, right? And that's what causes a lot of the problems for us. A lot of young men, and especially young women too, are exposed to pornography at a really early age. But what healthy sexuality should be, devoid of a lot of emotion and intimacy, and it's like should be this way. And so I guess what's more psychologically healthy, it depends on how you're exposed, not like which one. It's not an either or. It's kind of a how, and the best way is I mean, let's admit it. Like our education around this and awareness around this is pretty bad, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, what is sex ed nowadays in school? Like, I didn't even go through sex ed through school. I had to learn through porn. I think a lot of guys do, and that's the problem, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Let me see. Gavin said, hypnotherapy has really helped me change identity. Game changer. What other ways can help change your ID?
Yeah, so actually my roommate, and he's an entrepreneur. He's a hypnotherapist, and hypnotherapy is like a crazy good. Go straight to your subconscious. I mean, the how process is a long process, right? But I take something. I was trained in narrative therapy, and the way that kind of works is that we implement our lives into a story, and we're naturally drawn to stories. And you are the hero of your own story. Everyone listening, you can't help it, right? You're egocentric. You're the hero of your own journey. And so across your life, you had things happen to you. And whether you realize it or not, you make meaning. That's what humans do. We make meaning out of events and you put yourself into the story. And so when you can kind of organize your story and then go into the past, the first chapter is written for you, right? As far as like who you are. But that's because you didn't know how to like look at things from a different perspective. So what I help guys do is they go into these past chapters of like, let's say they were abandoned by their mom, as an example, an extreme example, but they learned early on, like, I'm not good enough for a woman. Women are going to abandon me. That gets embedded into your psyche about who you are, what you
Right.
deserve from a woman. So like we go into these past experiences first, these past chapters, we re-edit them, see the truth behind that meaning, and then you go into the future chapters and see what you want to develop for the remainder of the story. And when you can organize your life into the story with the characters and you being the hero, that is what really helps change your identity as well from that perspective.
Yeah, I think that's really good. It's interesting, that people think that memories are concrete. It's an actual recollection of the actual events, but it's like you can go back and revisit your memories, and the studies show that every time that you recall a memory, you actually alter that memory and change it. And so, like you're
You're
saying,
recalling the last time you remembered it, not the actual event, right?
exactly. So you can remember it in a different way, not changing the events, but changing the perspective of those events, because emotions and meaning are associated with that memory. And you can literally unpack that, give it a brand new meaning and new emotions associated with it, and then pack it back. And now that memory, which shapes your identity, is altered.
I might lose a couple of people here, but they get esoteric a little bit. Like it's possible with different timelines too, that if you remember it differently, that maybe you're shifting your timeline a little bit to a
Oh,
different
that's interesting.
timeline. That's like timeline therapy, and that's like really out there and it's not proven, but I found it to be super effective as well when you kind of take that approach and you're like just making different meaning out of the event and altering the future you want. I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have like infinite possibilities from this present moment about the future. And by visualizing the future that you want to have, it's literally like you're grabbing a string from your head and you're like, this is the timeline I want to go down on, right? And your emotions are the energy that connect you to that timeline. So that's some pretty advanced stuff, but yeah, I found it to be really effective personally.
Yeah. It's really interesting. A lot of people think that that's kind of crazy woo-woo stuff out there, but the thing about it is, like, you can't know that, like, because you have a belief and that belief is so strong, you can't know that your belief, it didn't actually create that reality that it exists. So it's interesting, like, to take that perspective and to at least to take that into account and say, well, if I change my identity, if I change.
It doesn't hurt to try it out and see what happens if you try that hat on and believe it. I mean, it's only helpful as from what I can see. So
Exactly. Yeah. Let me see. We got some more questions here. So I guess Tarek was saying, and this is good. So he said, I mean, can porn be helpful as an educational tool? What's
right.
your thoughts on
I
that?
was interviewing what's his name, Sterling Cooper. That
Oh
he's
yeah,
like
yeah,
the porn star. He's like doing self development now, and he made a good point that really challenged me. He was like, "Well, when you say the word porn, like it encompasses everything, the whole umbrella of porn, right? Most people think of porn like you can go to deviant, illegal stuff,
right,
all the way to like vanilla, educational kind of thing." And I mean, yeah, of course, it can be helpful as an educational tool, but if we look at the umbrella, like what 99.9% of it is not healthy, right? And
right.
that's just the way it is. I mean, I guess it can be used as an educational tool for sure, but I guess there's a way that has to be kind of streamlined and structured where it's like, and when it's exposed to guys and how it's produced and all this stuff. But I would say generally, it's when you type in porn in the search bar, it's not going to give you that educational porn. It's going to give you what most people are searching for, which I think the top fetishes are like not healthy stuff. So
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's interesting. Sterling's a friend of mine as well, and he put out a course, which I had promoted at one point on on bedroom, like, on improving your sex quality, and that was actually an instructional, and it was to some degree porn, because if you want to see Sterling Cooper's actually doing the act, like he's got it, it's full, it's definitely you could qualify it as porn. But like I think that's a good example. Like it's a really good course, like you will learn a lot, but a lot of it, in fact, what he's teaching is more the psychological than necessarily the technique. I mean, he teaches some technique stuff in there too, but that's like an example of where he's using it specifically to teach. And I would say, if you buy his course, if you watch his course, yeah, that you're going to learn something. But then again, like, what's your purpose behind it? Your purpose is not to, I mean, hopefully you're not going to get his course to use as fantasy material. You're getting it to actually educate yourself. So I think it's like, what are you really going to go and look for random porn on the internet and learn something from it? You might learn the wrong thing,
I mean, you can learn, I think, just as effectively by getting a book on how to improve your sex life, or
right. Yeah, I think that, yeah, exactly, that makes sense. Like, it can just be said. So let's see. So
good question though, Clerk.
Let me see. We got a couple more questions here. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. How long does it take to get rid of porn-induced ED? Been watching it for 8 years now. 19.
Yeah, man, this there's no objective measure on this. Studies need to catch up with it. So I can just tell you from what I've seen from guys that kind of come into my program, and for most guys that kind of come into the program and work with me, within so just like it takes 66 days to develop a habit, it's around that mark too, like around 2 months. But I mean, I know some guys after like 30 days after quitting that they're completely back to default state. So it really does depend on you, because ED isn't just because of pornography; it's a huge component. But I mean, anxiety around sex can cause that, right? Being in your head too much. So it is a huge factor, but there's other factors involved, and those other factors can influence how long it takes for each individual. But I would say on average, it takes like 45 days for each person. I've seen 1,000+ guys that come to my program. So
yeah. And guys, if you don't know what Josh is talking about, if you're just joining the program, the link to the program is down below if you want to check that out. But yeah, I mean, that's a really good point about it depends on the person. I think also, like, because part of it, like we talked about the rewiring of the brain and how you can wire your brain to have a sexual response, which I think is really interesting. But one thing I discovered, like with coaching a lot of guys too, is that it's also like rewiring your brain to have the sexual response with the sexual partner. So like if obviously ED a lot of times prevent you from having sex, but if you can get repeated exposures where you're not doing porn, but you're with a partner and you're having sex with that partner, then you will train your body to respond to that partner, because sometimes it's partner specific. I think a lot of guys also in pickup don't realize this, is that they have AD problems when they bring home a girl, and it's like, well, it's because your brain is wired to be, you might not have those problems with a specific partner that you have repeated sex with, because your brain is wired for that, like the sexual response, like your brain is very adaptable to sexual responses.
110%. And also, if you're I don't know, like I heard going out, like also if you're drinking alcohol, that's definitely, everyone knows that doesn't help you.
Exactly. So let's see. Tekken Godjet says, what do you think the real purpose of porn is?
Depends on the person who's making it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to make money, like, let's be real, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And like, if there's lots of documentaries that kind of show people that, you only see the glamour a lot of times, and you don't see what's happening offset. Like a lot of these porn stars, they come from broken homes. It's so tragic how cliche it is, but like I've interviewed a lot of them, and porn was like an outlet for them. And a lot of times, like they get discarded after a couple of sets, and you only see like the top like porn stars, and that's like 1% of that whole entire genre, right? And it's an industry to make money. I mean, that's the purpose. Right. It's for guys to satiate this need in an unhealthy way, and then it's to make money. I mean, that's just the bottom line,
Yeah.
That's the purpose.
Yeah, I think of it a lot like too, like just like with nutrition too, right? It's kind of the same type of thing. It's an artificial construct. Like, back in the day before they had refined and processed sugar, you couldn't get sugar. Like, where are you going to get sugar? I mean, chewing on sugar, even if you chewed on sugar cane, there's only so little amount in there, or fruits, right? It's like the kind of food that we eat today that has like real sugar in it, that didn't exist in nature. That's like an artificial contrast. That's why we're so obese and we have so much problems with diet and nutrition. Like if you just had the food from hundreds of years ago, you wouldn't be addicted to that food because it's not that good. It's not, we have created an unnatural. In fact, food scientists specifically engineer, to create addictions. And I think porn is the same thing in regards to sex. It's like
100%. How many naked women do you think someone would see, an average guy would see a couple thousand years ago? Like one, two,
right.
and it took a lot of work. So you had to be like the one of the higher members in the tribe, and you had to like do whatever to get her. And it's like now, click, like load of hundreds, thousands, if not. It's like, of course, it's going to affect your brain in a negative way.
Exactly. Yeah. And imagine, I always think about imagine it's hard to imagine today because most men have been exposed to porn. I don't know any man that hasn't been exposed to porn, at least to some degree. But if you were never exposed to it at all, imagine how unlikely to be an incel you how much that drive to just even just see a naked woman, would be that you would be willing to do what it takes to improve yourself, to go out there, talk to women and solve your problem. I think that would solve a lot of guys. We have a unique problem today.
I never thought of it like that. That's a really good perspective to have, John. Yeah, that's a really good perspective. That's so true. Like the amount of incels would be drastically decreased because it's like, well, how else are they going to get that just like insatiable hunger? Like people literally went to war over women. You know what I mean? So yeah, of course. Of course.
Let's see. Phantom Metal wants to know about dealing with the guilt and shame from relapse.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a great question. So I talk about like the way to quit. A lot of people focus on the proactive strategies, like the habit, the routine, and that's all super important, but it's 50%. How you respond to failure, and that's anything in life, right, John? How do you respond to failure? That self-talk, the way you feel about something is equally as important. Like when you get rejected by a girl, are you beating yourself up, or are you telling yourself, like, who has the balls to actually walk up to a girl and express themselves and go after them? And that's the kind of man I am, right? Like, what's your reaction to failure? And so it's no different with shame from a relapse. And a lot of times, like, shame is saying that, like, I'm a bad person for doing this.
Right.
And when you feel bad, you're more likely to you feel bad, so you isolate yourself, right? I call this cycle, right? So like after you relapse, you feel bad, you isolate yourself. After you isolate yourself, studies show that psychologically you're extremely stressed. And how do you deal with that stress again? Go back to porn. And it's this vicious cycle over and over until you go to your like metaphorical hell, which I was at. And so how to deal with it is the best way to deal with it is to share with other people.
Yeah.
Shame is like that. I want to isolate. So when you do the exact opposite, you open up to someone else, talk about this shame, let it out, forgive yourself. Like forgive yourself. And that's easier said than done,
Yeah, for sure.
So like connecting and then forgiveness are integral to dealing with shame from a relapse for sure.
Yeah. I think a lot too, you can tie it back to the identity too. It's like you said, like it's like if you think you're bad or you think and it's like if you are trying to accomplish things with willpower and then you fail, it's almost like, some of the things in life that I've struggled with where I've had to is to be more of the mindset of not trying to use willpower and just saying, hey, if it happened, it happened. But instead of focusing on what happened, focusing on my identity, like, shifting my identity, and then knowing that if I succeed in shifting my identity, then I won't even want to do this. I won't even want this thing. It'll naturally resolve itself rather than focusing so much on what went wrong. I think so many people focus on that and then they feel bad and they, and then they're forming that identity as I'm a person who fails. I'm a person who does this.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's like. I'm a bad person. That's what shame does. Exactly. So imagine it almost like a metaphor as like the shame and the guilt and the regret is this giant ball and chain holding you back into the past. Right. And like forgiveness is like getting these like magic scissors that just cuts off that ball and chain, allowing you to move forward in life. And there's a whole process on how to do this, but in the course that I have, but like it's being able to forgive yourself is just like, it just lets you move forward to the man you want to become.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. Let's see. Unique 79 says, a shout out to Unique, by the way. Thank you for always jumping in here and moderating the chat. Appreciate it. He says, do you think more interactions with women will reduce men from watching porn, considering that most of the virgins today are men compared to women being virgins years ago? That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so as long as their interactions, as long as they keep them pushing through it, because if you do a couple of interactions with women and you kind of get rejected, which is going to be inevitable if you first start doing it. Yeah, it's going to suck. But then if you keep on pushing through it, of course, it's going to be reducing the effects of watching porn, and also I think it's a big reason why a lot of guys are more virgins than ever. Yeah, like you just said it, John. Like if porn's so accessible, why would they get this need met in a heart? Why go like literally? People would rather die than get rejected. And like that feeling is people rather literally die than get
Yeah.
rejected by someone. It's just evolutionary enough. So it makes sense why guys are choosing to opt out. But of course, man, if you can have the right skills to like go up to a woman, know how to attract her, and push through that, it can become an addictive process in itself. So you have to be careful, right? A lot of guys in the pickup community become addicted to it, but yeah, man, if you could learn how to do something in a healthy way, like the urge for watching porn, like you get that need met in a organic way, so you don't need to go to porn as much.
Yeah, I think also you have to be careful too because there's a lot of guys are in relationships that are addicted to porn still. So that's like
Yep.
just because you get a girl doesn't mean that you're not gonna, you know, so you have to be careful. You can't just assume that. Like you still have to work on the actual avoiding the porn, you know, breaking that, just being able to get girls, even guys in pickup. There's a ton of guys that are in pickup that have success, but they're also still addicted to porn, and sometimes it feeds that cycle. So
That's a really good point. Yeah.
let's see. Greg H says this is very blue pill, a bit naive. Sorry. So I don't know, Greg. Why do you think that this is blue pill? What are your thoughts on this? Because I think a lot of guys are gonna say, "Oh, this is very blue pill." Uh,
Yeah, I like to see an elaboration on that as well, what he means by that, because I have a conception about what blue pill means. But I mean, for me, blue pill is like being stuck in the matrix and doing what everyone else is doing. And by watching porn, you're literally connected to the computer, like, and majority of people are doing it. So I think quitting porn is actually very antithetical to what the common narrative. So I'd like to see an elaboration on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys tend to think today, and maybe Greg will put an elaboration there. We can talk about it, but I think a lot of guys today put anything into the blue pill category that isn't basically a mindset of just using women for sex, and that's that's all they're good for, right? Because they tend to I don't know. We see this like the red pill and guys that are very very much anti women, and so when we talk about relationship dynamics and stuff like that, that's actually healthy sexual responses. I think guys they get brainwashed by this and they believe that anything that's not exactly this of basically women are evil is blue pilled. I think we see too much of that today.
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, like I'm not telling anyone can do whatever the hell you want. Like I'm not telling
Yeah.
you guys have to do it. Like I said in the very beginning, there's people out there that can drink alcohol and have a glass of whiskey or wine and they're good. And if you can watch porn and it's not affecting you negatively, by all means, dude, like do whatever you want. I'm just saying, like from a scientific perspective, like how much time is this eating away? Is it destroying your dopamine? Like it's affecting you negatively. And if it's impeding with the things that you want and you're not happy in the relationships with women, maybe try it out for 30 days and quit porn and see what it does for you. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's see. Here's Perfection, the Natural Selection. He says, I'm sorry, I got to call it out. We never call it women's addiction to porn, dildos, vibrators, strap-ons, etc. It's always aimed at shaming men in some way or shape or form. Oh, I see. This is why it sounds like a tradcon argument. Okay, so maybe this is part of the connection between the blue pill. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, like I help men, right? I'm not in the space of helping women, so I don't know their issues and problems. So if it is a problem for a lot of men, I don't know much about it. If it is, then yeah, they should take care of it too. Like I hear women, it's the same thing. I hear women saying that like, I don't need no man, so I'm just gonna go use this and do that, and like it's the same core issue. Like they're not enough, and they rather do what's easier for them. And so I'm sure the same thing happens on the other side of the gender, in the aisle. But I don't know much about it because I don't help women. But yeah, I mean, I just don't call it women because I choose to help men because I'm a guy and I know how to help men. So
Yeah, I think part of this is too, like again, this whole mindset, like we're not calling out men here. Like this is not a war between men and women. This is not like the purpose of us saying this about breaking porn addiction is not to say men are bad, like men have this problem. It's to say do you want to help yourself? Like this is for your own, so you shouldn't be thinking of it as well, will women do it as well, or women have problems as well. Of course women have problems as well, but the focus here is on helping. Do you want to help yourself to have a better life? Forget about what other people are doing. Forget about what women are doing. It doesn't matter. Like, what do you want for your life?
yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so Sarash says, how do you change your core identity? How long does it take, and how do you know the image you have in mind is the right one? Oh, that's a good.
That's a good question. It's like asking like, what do you want? Who are you? You know, these
Right.
crazy esoteric questions. The how it's, I mean, we could be here for multiple hours, John. Like the how
Yeah.
it's in the course, right? I mean, it's a process. I worked with like 8 guys for 8 years and thousands of hours I perfected. But how long does it take? I mean, how do you fully know when you fully change your identity, right? Because like, let's look at it this way. Let's say you have an idea of the guy you want to become, right? You have
Mhm.
the money you want, you have the woman you want, you have the fitness you want as well, the body. It's like as soon as you climb that mountain, as you know, John, right? Like you see another mountain, like, oh, I want that mountain now. So you have to go down and climb the other mountain, right? So it's like never
Right.
a fixed state where you're like finally you're happy, finally you're the man you want to be. It's always constantly improving, right? And so it's like falling in love with the process. And I mean, how do you know the image you have in mind is the right one? Only you know that,
Right.
right? And so you closing your eyes and seeing the guy you want to become. There's like a future visualization technique. Dr. Dispenza calls it mind movies. Carl Jung called the active imagination. But if you have these visions in your mind of the man you want to become, this like lifestyle you want to live, like I tell guys, like I'll give them an example. I tell guys one of the exercises in the course is like think of yourself in 5 years, right? Pick a perfect day, write down exactly what you did every single part of that day. What time did you wake up? Like where were you? Like what did you look like in the mirror? How were you feeling? Was a girl next to you in your bed? What did she look like? And then you go out throughout this whole entire perfect day. And then once you have that perfect day set, that's like an ideal goal of the man you want to become.
Right.
And look, and I'll kind of summarize this question with this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time by Zig Ziglar. He's like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, it's not what you get by achieving your goals, but who you become in the process. Right.
Exactly.
And so, like, by trying to achieve this lifestyle and these things you want, you're becoming the man you want to be. And it's just falling in love with the journey. I mean, like, where I'm at right now, I would have loved, I mean, that's this, I meant, like, this is what I wanted when I was 16, right? 17, but now you want more. So it's just falling in love with the process of growth, really.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree with that. Yeah. It's, one thing I think about like your identity and who you were, because a lot of people say, oh, you just be yourself, or, you're don't be a fake, or, it's like, and they sort of throw off this idea of like becoming something or transforming. And it's like who you really are is who you want to be. Like the desires that you have for all these things, like that's actually who you are. Like all this crap is getting in the way and preventing you from being it. So whatever you believe that you want to be, that is the right image for you.
And I'll give one more metaphor. I love metaphors, right?
Yeah.
So a famous psychologist, she talked about, especially in Western culture, we think about becoming something that we're not, right? Like developing this like sculpture of who we are. This one psychologist believed that we are these diamonds, right? And we're already perfect the way we are. It's just that over time, trauma and all this crap and all these like fake stories throw dirt on us. And
Yeah.
about becoming who you want to be is about removing that dirt, and that's about forgiving yourself, releasing this trauma, letting go of past things that are holding you back, right? The stuff you're depressed about. Once you're able to do that, then becoming who you are is like a natural process. So that's kind of like another way to look at it. Instead of becoming something that you're not, you already are. It's just about removing the crap out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, to relate it to some things that some guys are very familiar with in this space, Rollo Tomasi's book in Rational Male, one of the things that I really agree with him that he says, he talks about about like every 3-year-old is alpha as fuck, right?
Mm.
And it's true. It's like you already were that. Like what happened? Why aren't you alpha? Why aren't you out? Why don't you do whatever you want to do? And it's because all these other things got in the way. Like you became self-conscious. Like society pressures, embarrassment, bad experiences have covered that up, and so you're not authentically you. Like you are alpha, even though I don't really like the term, but you are. Like that you have all this stuff that's preventing you from being it. It's not that you have to become it. You already are it. I think a lot of people think that they're not. It's like you said. I think that diamond analogy is perfect.
Yeah, and if you think you're not, you're gonna continue not to be, right?
Let's see. Here's a good one about he said Teak Gotti says, can changing the type of porn you come over help you change the type of porn that gets you off? Would you say just looking at photos and videos of just a solo girl being healthy for the male brain?
Yeah, I mean, I found the most effective strategy is to just kind of go cold turkey from it and use the right approach of like changing your habits. But if you feel like that would be like, for example, going back to alcohol, like if you were binging, 8 drinks a day, I mean, instead of going cold turkey, if you want to go down to like 4 and then 2 and then 1, it's better than not trying at all.
Right.
So yeah, definitely improvement. And then I guess after looking at photos, just using your imagination, eventually going off. But yeah, man, use it as an experiment. I mean, see how it changes you. I prefer personally, and the guys I work with, to just completely get rid of it totally. But yeah, I mean, it's better than not trying at all. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Let's see here. I got a couple of super chats. So Cocoa Puff, I see your super chat here. We're not gonna answer this one, right? Because it's just off topic. But if you want to send me an email, or better yet, in the Bulldog Mindset membership, we're gonna do a live stream on Saturday. You can ask questions there. I'll acknowledge your super chat and thank you for it. But yeah, we're not gonna answer this here because it's off topic and respect to everyone else here. But appreciate it. Let me see it. I want to pick out like one more good question here. Uh, okay. Johan says here, does day game make sense at 18? I have 3 hours of commuting every day. Should I use them to get a little work done or talk with women? It's a good.
Yeah, it depends on your goals. Like, what do you want? Right? Go back to what you want. Like, if you have like these two goals of like wanting to develop kind of your dating game life versus like your business, I mean, which one do you want to focus on more of? I mean, if you have 3 hours, wait, I have 3 hours of commute. Oh, I have 3 hours commuting each day. I mean, what's your thoughts on this one, John? I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, I always say like you have three things. You have women, fitness, and money, and you can pick two to work on at a time.
mm,
So, it's actually better if you can focus on one at a time, and then bring the other ones down to habits where you put them in maintenance mode. But yeah, I mean that if you're 18, you have to look at what's going to be the net benefit in your life the most, right? It's probably going to be building business, right? That's probably going to give you the biggest benefit. At the same time, do you have to develop social skills? Do you have to take care of your body? Yeah, you do. But if you're going to focus on one thing, I would say to focus more on the business aspect, because that's gonna take a long time and pay you dividends down the road. Whereas you can learn game, you can learn that stuff as long as you remain somewhat social. So if you do a little bit of to keep those skills intact, and then when you're ready, when you've got things going, you've grinded out the business side of it, then you can focus more on that.
yeah, and Johan, it doesn't have to be an either or in your mind. I think that's kind of limiting. Like,
Yeah.
when you go to the grocery store, when you go out on a walk, if you go on walks around to a park or go to a coffee store, whatever. It's like when you see an attractive woman, you can go up and talk to them. It doesn't have to be like, all right, this dedicated time is for dating. I'm going to go out and I'm going to grind
Right.
like that. That's kind of exact opposite approach I teach guys with dating. Personally, John, like it's like no, you have your day-to-day life and you just go to these social areas where girls are, and if you see them, that's when you go and talk to them. So it doesn't have to be an either or in my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And like if you think about how you want to actually live your life, you probably want to, live your life in such a way that it's integrated, that you're an integrated human being, where that like you want to be the guy that when you see a girl, you just talk to her. You don't want to be the guy that has to go out to a specific place in a specific context, and then that's when you turn it on. I mean, you could even relate to the same thing with sex, as it's like if you train your brain to only respond sexually when you're sitting in front of your computer, that's not a good thing. You want it to respond in sexual encounters with women, like so. Same thing there. I think you can, you don't want to train yourself to just only talk to women when you're specifically in this venue, and specifically it's time to talk to women. So
Because it also builds up the anxiety a lot too when guys do it that way.
yeah. All right. So we're running out of time here. We should probably wrap this up here. But yeah, so guys, first of all, check the link down below if you want to grab Josh's course. It's really, really good for, if you want to finally break the porn addiction, and even I think it'll help you just with dopamine in general, right? With breaking addictions, or or resetting kind of your brain. If you guys are interested in dopamine detox, this is one of the biggest areas of dopamine drain that you're getting on your brain. So definitely check that out. Like I said, the link's in the description. And what kind of parting advice would you give, Josh, for guys that are struggling with this? I think there's a lot of guys that feel like they're helpless, that there's nothing they can do. They've tried the nofap, they've relapsed. It's nofap November, so guys are are failing, and they're feeling bad about themselves, and they think, well, this is just how I'm going to live. I'm just this is a problem I'll just have to deal with. Or they justify in their mind, it's not a problem. It must not be a problem. Everyone does this. It's not a problem.
Yeah, that's kind of two separate questions. So I'll address the guys who are struggling first. Like with those guys,
Yeah.
It's like, look, man, self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you believe you're never going to be able to solve this. You never will. And so like, I was the same way. I struggled for years because willpower and forcing it in cold showers and push-ups and meditation, that was all like top of the house, like we talked about. Like you like
Right.
try to force it. But once you understand where the urges are coming from and meet those needs from the core level, the urges go away, right? So that's the approach I have. It took me years to figure this out, right? But I finally got it down. So this is something new. And for the guys who are considering like, oh, I don't need to quit this, try. Like I was thinking the same thing when this all started for me. Like my friend begged me like I couldn't quit for 30 days. I was like, oh, easy, right? And so for yourself, if you're thinking this is an issue, try quitting for 30 days. And if you can, and it's not a big issue, then it's not a big issue. But if you can't, I maybe reconsider just figuring out why can't I quit this thing for 30 days? Why is it so hard? And then kind of maybe experiment with yourself. But ultimately, man, like I didn't believe this hype and everything, but like ever since I quit porn, it's not like you get superpowers. It's just like you get rid of the crap, like we talked about. Like you actually have natural motivation, natural energy. You have high testosterone. You're able to, go after women, feel confident because you're getting rid of all this stuff that's kind of porn is causing damaging effects with your brain. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I agree 100%. And yeah, guys, try it if you can't. If you can't for 30 days, then or if you even know. I mean, think about it. Like, are you really going to make it 30 days? Not that that's any going to give you any kind of superpower, but it's just an indicator. So yeah, thanks for joining, Josh. This is great. We'll definitely have to have some more conversations because, like I said, we see things a lot the same way. I think we've gone through a lot of the same struggles in life, and everything, and kind of coming to a similar conclusion where I feel like a lot of guys kind of need this kind of advice that you're giving, where they, it's well balanced, right? So many guys are stuck in these tribes of blue pill, red pill, big cow, and all this stuff, and that's not really the answer. So I'm glad you're providing that kind of content, guys. You can check out Josh's channel as well, Pinnacle of Man. He's got some really good content in there, and including an interview with me if you want to check that out as well. So
thanks, Sean, for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, Josh.
See you.